Hi, good afternoon. For those that are just gradually joining us, we're just going to give it a couple of moments just to let everybody to connect this afternoon before we dive in. But happy to have you all here with us today. Hope you're all having a good day so far. Right, in the interest of time, as we've got lots of great content to get through today, I'm going to kick off. So hi everybody, and welcome to the latest Industry Insider in IAB Europe series, which we are delighted to be hosting today live with TikTok, as we look to explore the wonderful world of commerce. I'm Lauren Wakefield. I'm the Marketing and Industry Programs Director at IAB Europe. Most of you are perhaps already familiar with our Industry Insider setup. But what it really is just a really great opportunity to get expert advice, examples and insights on, some of the hottest topics in our industry from those that are most in the know, IAB Europe members and their partners. But today, as I said, we're very excited to have TikTok with us to discuss commerce and look at what exactly is happening on TikTok and beyond. Joining us today, we have our Chief Economist, Daniel Knapp, who's going to provide an overview of the commerce opportunity and look at the landscape available in Europe today. We will then have a panel discussion where Ryan, Global Business Marketing Program Manager at TikTok, will lead a discussion with Daniel, as well as Aoife Dowling from Shopify, Nilam Atodaria from INCA, and Michelle Cagle from TikTok. And they're just going to really dive into the past, present and future of commerce and the exciting opportunities it presents for marketers. So really great agenda for the next couple of hours. Just before I hand over to Daniel, a little bit of housekeeping, if you like. So we are live today, and we do really encourage your participation where possible. So if you do have any questions for any of our panelists as we go through the session today, you can find the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. So do add any questions you've got in there. And Ryan, our moderator, will try and get through to as many of them as we can, either through or towards the end of the session. It is live, as I mentioned, and we are also recording the session. So we will be sharing that with you all afterwards, as well as some great materials for you to kind of dive a little bit further into commerce. But with that, Daniel, I'm going to hand over to you to share your presentation.
Thank you very much, Lauren. Hi, everybody. My name is Daniel Knapp. I'm the Chief Economist at IAB Europe, and would like to give some introductory remarks on the commerce landscape and how it relates to advertising in Europe. And Lauren, you mentioned the past of commerce, and in my title here, you see the e-commerce. I think it's very important to understand that retail concepts and ways of doing commerce have always changed throughout history. It wasn't until just only 200 years ago that we had the first physical stores. Then we moved from physical stores to malls, we went to teleshopping, now we're going to e-commerce, to social commerce, etc. And commerce, if you look at the term and see where it comes from, it means it comes from commerce, coming together to do business. So it's quite interesting that before we had social commerce or e-commerce or anything like that, it was always about a social activity, a social exchange. And in a sense, as we are moving towards a digital world of trading and doing commerce, very different environments, we're actually coming closer to the original meaning of the word again. But it's a particular time to speak today about e-commerce and how it relates to digital advertising, because we all know that the pandemic gave e-commerce models a massive boom. We saw both streaming and e-commerce propel digital advertising to new heights in 2020 and 2021. But of course, we now have an entirely new macro environment based on cyclical transformations, the economy, and also structural change in advertising with the deprecation of third-party cookies, ATT, and so forth, which create numerous headwinds. So how does the world of commerce and commerce-related advertising look like in this new world? Clearly, there's no simple crisis that we have. That's the wonderful German term of Krisenbilder, i.e. crisis pictures. And when you see this abstract art of arrows here, you can see we do indeed have a poly crisis currently. Many different factors coming together, amplifying each other. And within those, we also have kind of single so-called macroscopic events, i.e. when any of those hits, the economy and their advertising is going to be severely impacted beyond any conflation or combination of the factors here not highlighted in red. So we can already see that advertising is under pressure here, but are we really in an ad-induced recession yet? So we can see, for lack of a better word, if we look at quarterly results, we can see big tech on the left and agencies on the right, and you can see very kind of different types of performance here. Number one, of course, many tech platforms driven by this massive surge that we saw during the pandemic as SMEs, as D2C models really scaled up and used these outlets to drive advertising. But also, of course, and this is of course correcting now downwards, but also, of course, impact of ATT and others is affected here. Whereas we can see on the agency world, something entirely different. Also commerce models prevalent here, however, very different type of advertisers, less SMEs, more kind of big Fortune 500 clients, working more in an upfront commitment way. So it's a quite different picture here. So we see different trends, growth trends occurring at the very same time within advertising. It's worth to note that the key drivers of digital ad spend, mainly fueled some of the big tech players during the pandemic, have vanished. Number one, we see in Europe a strong, everywhere else in the world as well, but in particular here we have the numbers, a strong exposure of SMEs to digital advertising, meaning that the share of digital ad spend that SMEs allocate in their overall budget, it's much higher than for large brand marketers. We can also see that the era of cheap money is definitely over. This chart here shows that until very recently, until a couple of months ago, was probably the cheapest time in history to borrow money. Cheaper it was for us than for the ancient Egyptians, and that has of course fueled VC-based models for D2C startups, scale-ups, new e-commerce models, and so forth. And these funds are now drying up as some of these companies are now focusing more on profitability over growth. We can also see that some SMEs, which have fueled e-commerce spend, are reaching natural spending limits, i.e. they ramped up their models during the pandemic, acquired new customers, upsold customers, increased basket size and so forth, but then are physical limits to their growth. I can't do more logistically from a product perspective, and also advertising has in many cases become much more expensive, plus attribution models are under strain due to ATT and other factors. And indeed, the world, we thought it was going to change, but it hasn't totally changed. So what we can see here is actually a map of the Zoom IPO and stock price growth, demonstrating in a sense the pandemic era. And then as Europe's busiest airport, we can see Heathrow passenger numbers, and there's an inverse correlation between those two. So we're seeing a move back towards a physical world. There's a rebalancing, of course, which takes away some of that oxygen that we had in digital advertising in the commerce world in 2020 and 2021. Many looked at this data before the chart was updated, and there was this narrative of, did we see a 4-year growth spurt within 3 months in terms of retail sales internet retail sales as a percentage of total retail sales? Well, we can see we're seeing a correction. We're going back to linear growth. There was a pandemic blip, and this exponential surge is coming down again. So these are factors that are currently impacting e-commerce overall. But the pandemic boom has also brought forward consumer adoption of e-commerce, which remains sticky. And I think this is pretty clear here. Here we see e-shoppers in Europe, data from the European Commission that looks at people who within the last 12 months have at least once bought an item, a good or a service online. And yes, we saw that massive growth in 2020, a slight downward correction in 2021 as lockdowns eased and more physical stores again became available, brick and mortar came back. But remarkably, we see in 2022, this forecast data from the Commission, we can see a slight increase again, meaning we are remaining high above pre-pandemic levels. Meaning, although we are seeing a correction now after this pandemic explosion, we have a new mindset for e-commerce in consumers. And also, of course, we have an ad industry as an e-commerce industry, from logistics, fulfillment to products, etc., developed an infrastructure which allows us to much better seize the potential of future growth. And indeed, there's huge potential. So when we look at China, the undisputed leader in e-commerce, we can see if we rank the other kind of 9 countries within the top 10, we can see that European markets, UK, Denmark, Norway, but also other larger markets, are kind of some of the top e-commerce markets in terms of penetration globally. But all these markets, of course, there's massive headroom to catch up to China. It has become clear that Chinese e-commerce models, in particular the rapid growth in terms of social commerce, they are not that easily transposable to European and US consumers' mindsets. So this is going to be a longer journey. However, I think this chart really illustrates that there's a long and very interesting road ahead of us to grow the European market further to this benchmark China level where China is today. In a more muted ad environment, we have revised our ad spend outlook downwards in IAB Europe. From previously, there's all digital ads, 10% in my May forecast, to now 7.1% for 2022, and then only 5.5% growth in 2023, whereas all other media are actually down. However, and then it's growth again. However, commerce-related channels, those that can, in particular, those that can combine ad exposure and conversion into a single platform, into a single environment, are going to thrive. Particular performance advertising, we can see, has always been much more resilient during recessionary environments. And indeed, every crisis breeds opportunity. So we had in the post-Lehman world of 2009, the ad market was depressed, but we saw search and performance media that were linking to intent in particular, driving much further growth. And we can see the same here as a kind of proxy for commerce or commerce-related advertising when we look at retail media, which we see outperforming tremendously here with an over 3x multiplier versus total digital advertising. And this is right now on the performance level in particular, what we're going to see as we're moving out of the recession, presumably in 2024, also these type of models or this kind of e-commerce related advertising move further to the middle and also to the top of the funnel, fueled by transactional data and also by the realization that kind of brand and also conversion need to be brought much closer together, maybe even in a single ad impression. So there's change, there's cyclical change, there's structural impact from the pandemic hangover in a sense, from changes in targeting. However, on this new infrastructure of commerce and digital that has been built, performance-related media and later other commerce-related media can thrive. So we should remain optimistic. And I'm very excited to discuss with the panel how this might look like exactly in the future, which new channels are being unlocked, which new ways of doing commerce-related advertising are actually going to be unlocked. And with that, thank you very much, and back to you, Laura.
Daniel, thank you so much for that wonderful overview there, and lots, I think, for everyone to think about, and we can kind of dive into a bit more detail in the panel session. So with that, Ryan, I am going to hand over to you to introduce your panelists and run through the questions today. And as I said at the beginning, if anyone does have any questions as we go through the panel, please do pop them in the Q&A box, and Ryan will try and get to as many of them as he can. But Ryan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Amazing. Thank you, Lauren. And yeah, thank you, Daniel. Amazing to kind of set that context at a macro level. So very much appreciated. My name is Ryan Martin. I am a program manager at TikTok in the Global Business Solutions team. So, you know, helping TikTok grow and develop over these past couple of years. And it's my pleasure to host this wonderful panel for you this afternoon. On the panel, we have obviously Daniel, who you've just heard from, who is the Chief Economist at IAB Europe. Then we have Aoife from Shopify, we have Nilam from INCA, and then Michelle, who is my colleague at TikTok. So I'm very excited to get stuck in and have a bit of a conversation and hopefully a bit of a debate with these guys this afternoon. So I'm going to start things off pretty simple. I'm going to give you guys a bit of a platform to introduce yourself and let the audience know who you are and what your roles are and how you're approaching commerce. And I'd also love to know what was the last thing that you guys bought online? What was your last e-commerce purchase? I've actually been shopping this morning and I bought myself a jumper. I've realized that with the seasons changing, it's starting to get very, very cold. And I bought myself a jumper via Instagram, but I shouldn't probably say that too much. But yeah, that's me. So yeah, let's go first to you, Nilam.
Yeah, sure. It's nice to be here. So my name's Nilam. I'm the Global Product Director of INCA, which is an influencer solution by Group M Nexus. And I actually bought the TikTok viral trousers by Uniqlo, the one with the pleats, this morning as well.
Very nice. Good stuff. Hashtag TikTok made me buy it.
Yeah, I know. They did, though.
They did. Now you're just going to make a TikTok with you wearing them. Aoife, how about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Ryan. Hi, everyone. It's really nice to be here. My name is Aoife, and I lead agency partnerships at Shopify for the EMEA region. What was the last thing I bought? So I haven't shopped in a while. I've been on holidays for 3 weeks, so I haven't made an online purchase, which is quite strange. So I had to think about this. But before I went away, I did buy a present for someone. I bought a gold necklace from a UK London born brand called Daisy Jewelry. They're pretty popular. They're a Shopify merchant as well. And they're quite cool because they started in Portobello Market in the 70s, which I only learned when I looked them up today to see what their background was. But I was very pleasantly surprised to read their story.
Amazing. You've managed to plug your business and the company there. So great stuff there. Off to an absolute flyer. Michelle, over to you.
Hey everybody, happy to be here today. I'm Michelle Cable and I'm a product marketing manager looking after Europe and Israel at TikTok. So my focus is e-commerce. So, all online purchasing can all be done under the guise of market research. The last thing that I bought was a premium healthy cereal called Surreal. Surreal. It's like really high in protein, low in carbs, way too expensive, but actually really delicious. So I bought a multi-pack and have been enjoying that.
Amazing. What a variety of things we've all been buying. And finally, Daniel.
Well, I just bought a pair of Birkenstocks because I think they've been trending on different channels as well. And I think I want to try whether you can wear them in winter. And I bought them with a 90-minute delivery between click and doorbell. And actually, this short delivery, for me, is part of the brand, right? It's not something that the brand Birkenstock controls. But for me, this delivery channel that I chose with this 90 minutes is for me part of the brand experience. So I think logistics and product actually are coming together. At least I'm a total sucker for it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, crikey. Yeah, 90 minutes is very quick indeed. We talk about the collapsing purchase funnel, but I'm sure we'll soon be speaking on the speed of products getting out to you as well. Brilliant, right? So this is our esteemed panel. So if you recognize these guys, obviously you may recognize them from a video that TikTok in the IB Europe released a few weeks ago talking about e-commerce. And this is the cast of characters plus a few more that were on that video, which is still available. And I would thoroughly recommend you going all to check out. But as for today, let's start with a look at how the past, to look at where commerce has come from. So let's talk a bit about how you've seen the role of digital commerce change over the past few years. And what that's meant for each of your businesses. So, Nilam, let's start with you again. So, from that agency perspective, how are clients taking advantage of these new commerce opportunities online?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I think the commerce space has seen a massive, shift over the last couple of years. And I think something we make sure to do here is to make sure that all those foundational pieces are intact first. So, number one, you have the right data, you have the right CRMs, who your audiences are, how they differ from, platform A to platform B, etc. as well. And I think there was a lot of education that was done in order to make sure that was all done properly as well. And I think moving forward, what we're seeing is a lot of our brands want to kind of start utilizing these more up and coming features. So I know something that's been really key for us is the Shopify integration with YouTube, where you can effectively make YouTube videos shoppable. That from an influencer solution has been really game changing. And I think what we're going to see is a lot of brands, I guess, adapting more products from different vendors like this as well, and really seeing vendors like that shape the market as we go forward more and more as well.
Amazing. Yeah, so some great examples there. And so, Michelle, for you, obviously TikTok is still young but ever growing. Can you talk to me a bit about how the scope of commerce has really grown on the platform in the time that you've been with the business?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, as you mentioned, we are the new kid on the block, but it's been really exciting to kind of see like our trajectory of growth and all that we've been able to deliver from a roadmap perspective to our advertisers over the past 2 years. I think Triple Whale just came out with a study that D2C brands spend something like 230% more on advertising in TikTok in Q2 this year versus last year. So I think the rationale for this is part push and kind of part pull. Undoubtedly, just naturally, as a byproduct of the pandemic, we've seen a huge influx in digital investment with people, literally unable to shop IRL. But I think part of this is a reflection of the advancements we've made as a platform for e-commerce. So basically building for the future, from enhancing our signals and attribution solutions. A few launches that come to mind are Conversion Sandbox, Cookies, Attribution Manager, all solutions that help advertisers truly understand the impact of their investments on the platform, the scaling of our partnership with Shopify, new e-commerce advertising formats that we're in the process of testing. So in a very short period of time, we've accomplished a lot, and I think it's only the beginning there.
Good stuff. Yeah, long may it continue. And I guess straight away we're seeing some themes about that preparation required to be successful in this area, with how you're setting up and speaking to clients and creators, and also I guess the things in the back end that are so crucial to success of performance campaigns. Aoife, in your experience at Shopify, how have you seen the online commerce industry change? I feel like Shopify was a brand that I'd not heard of pre-pandemic, and now I see it everywhere. So yeah, it'd be great to understand it from your point of view.
Sure. Well, we're no stranger to change or disruption at Shopify. I think part of it is at our core, we're an entrepreneurship company, so it's pretty much in our DNA to keep on thriving. And so much that is exciting is happening. But what's really exciting is the pace of change in today's world. Within the last 5 to 10 years, we've seen a huge shift to SaaS and away from legacy software. No one 10 years ago would have been thinking about TikTok and how it would upend Gen Z and how they socialize and how they buy. No one would have been predicting how Web3 would disrupt the foundations of the internet itself. We wouldn't have been thinking about D2C and how it would shake up the entire retail industry. And then, of course, we wouldn't have accounted for the time machine that is the pandemic. So particularly zoning in on D2C, I think that's where Shopify has an incredibly strong track record. And in driving the D2C revolution, we've created really an entire new suite of category leaders and are helping retailers of all different sizes adapt to new environments. So that's really the biggest shift that we've seen, is the shift in retail, but also the creation of these new D2C giants across the world.
Yeah, it's amazing. It feels like with all the technology available from a creative point of view and from a business point of view, we really are democratizing anybody's ability to create content on a platform such as TikTok, but also establish and set up a business with partners such as Shopify. Daniel, obviously, you talked a bit about the macro changes of commerce over the years, and we talked about the acceleration, but then it's kind of stepped back. So, is this a case of 2 steps forwards and 1 step backward, or is this going to be, an ongoing trend that things are just going to start catching up with where we were during the pandemic?
There's indeed this correction that I mentioned. I think it was very visible in the chart. And I think, at the end of 2021, there was a bit of sense of irrational exuberance that the world had entirely changed. And I think those perceptions have been corrected. But I think partly it is also because the world of brick and mortar just opened up again, and there was more opportunity for consumers to shop differently. we, I think, have made more steps forward than backward. So this step backward in terms of just the penetration is a moment in time, whereas the macro trends, meaning consumer readiness to buy online, increase in trust to online shops, removal of friction through easier payment solutions, one click or no click checkout, all these things, plus kind of a tighter combination between logistics, fulfillment, content creation, and then advertising, that has created a commerce flywheel, which will set us up for kind of stronger growth as we're coming out of 2022 again. So it's not that things got just disappeared during the pandemic and we are back to 2019 levels. It's just we are on a much stronger foundation now and have a much higher consumer readiness to embrace e-commerce.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I guess they say necessity is the mother of all creation, and as we got all into lockdown, it's kind of accelerated the need to build all these connections with consumers and the whole infrastructure around the commerce world that we're all kind of living in today. And I guess, as you say, as things start to normalize and as we get through, I'm sure, many more economic downturns and upturns over the next months and years, then we should be on track to continue to see that growth. So kind of moving into kind of present day, I guess in your experience, what's the most exciting developments that you guys are seeing happening in commerce right now? Aoife, I'm going to come to you first on this one. So obviously Shopify and TikTok announced our partnership last year. Would you be able to kind of talk to us a little bit about this and then also touch on any of the highlights that you're really excited about?
Sure, yes. Okay. So social commerce is obviously a significant focus for Shopify, and it represents one of the fastest growing channels for all merchants on our platform, especially as more and more creators start to rely on TikTok to build their businesses. So our partnership with TikTok expanded last year with the launch of TikTok Shopping. So we became the first commerce platform to bring organic product discovery and shopping tabs to TikTok, helping creators and brands deepen their relationship with their consumers. So it's a new way for brands and entrepreneurs to reach those consumers. With about 1 billion, largely Gen Z, GMV and Gen Z, I'm muddling up all our, but with let's say 1 billion Gen Z users on TikTok, Michelle, you can correct me if I've got that number totally wrong. Businesses who are not there are going to be losing out. They're going to be losing out on a huge marketing opportunity, and they're also going to be losing out on long-term connections they can build with their communities. So considering that huge number of active users on the platforms, converting those viewers into customers means they can make some serious sales. And what we're seeing at Shopify is a lot of experimentation from our merchants in connecting to consumers that are on social media. In fact, last year, Shopify orders that were made through key partner services on Shopify by Shopify merchants grew 5x in Q2. So we're seeing incredible growth through partner platforms like TikTok. And we know it's not just a phenomenon for Shopify. About I think 64% of social network users surveyed said they had made a purchase via social commerce in 2021. I think that stat came from Accenture. So that aligns, Daniel, also to what you're talking about. We're continuing to see people's trust in social commerce strengthen. So one of the other areas that I'm really excited about and kind of ties to what we've been talking about in terms of logistics and really what's going on in the back end for these brands and merchants. Last year, we launched a product called Shopify Market. And what that is really a suite of products that brings together existing products that we have, looking at cross-border functionality into one dedicated surface area. So its functionalities include capabilities, if you think about it, like multi-currency, multi-language, international pricing. And we also have data-informed recommendations that we make to merchants to help them expand their businesses. So we have this wonderful suite of products called Shopify Markets. But what we're now actually doing is, in order to help evolve that and help merchants really grow and expand with ease, we're launching Shopify Market Pro. And this is where we're not just helping merchants look at all of these back-end challenges and give them a centralized experience, we're helping them do it at pace. So when merchants want to enter into a new market or a new region, they have to navigate all of these localized changes, and it can be really expensive and it can be really, really slow. So now the hope is, with our new trial coming of Markets Pro, merchants will be able to enter into 150 markets overnight without any of that overhead. So when you think about all that logistical pressure, the pains of shipping, all of these frustrations that can take a lot of time and energy from where brands are focusing, we're hoping to remove that pain. And if we remove that pain, then we step forward and say, okay, let's talk about growth strategies. Let's look at social commerce. Let's put our energy in a different direction. So really, it's part of our mission and part of our business to make commerce easier, smoother, better. So our merchants have the time, space, and can focus their creative and smart resources working on the growth of their business and focusing on their consumers. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Sounds amazing. Yeah, we talk about frictionless shopping from a consumer side, but I guess it's also from the back end as well, making it again as easy as possible for people to get stuck in. So Nilam, thinking about the clients that you're working with, who's currently finding success and exploring new opportunities within commerce?
Yeah, absolutely. I think something that we try and drill in all the time is that it's very rare for someone to go from, say, one ad or one thing that they've seen, say, on TikTok or Instagram, and then, go buy straight away as well. It takes those constant touch points to drive that single piece of commerce as well. And I think the brands that are doing really well are the ones that are thinking about the commerce journey in a very holistic way. And the ones that are identifying that it's a whole journey, and then you need to touch people in different sections in order to drive that as well. So I think a brand that we've done a lot of good work with recently has been Innocent. It's within the GroupM family, and we've been doing a lot of work in order to make sure that actually, number one, their foundations are correct, and then number two, looking into what kind of audiences we're targeting and where can we find them as well. And then on top of that, you can layer in the social piece as well. So identifying influencers, how does influencer content fit into this wider commerce journey, and then how to get people to go from seeing, I guess, the TikTok ad to then thinking about it, to then targeting them, say, via DSP, to then targeting them when they're on Tesco.com or whatever, and how to, I guess, navigate that whole journey in a seamless manner as well. So I think that's one brand. And I think the second thing I wanted to touch upon was, I know we're talking about social commerce, so a lot of that is spearheaded by APAC, and we have our wonderful APAC teams who are currently leading on TikTok Shop as well. So we're building out the TikTok shops for L'Oreal in a number of different Asian markets. And I think what's really interesting about that is that we're seeing a lot of positive numbers. And what we're seeing also is the fact that, yeah, as you mentioned, the kind of commerce journey is being collapsed in certain ways as well, and creating this kind of direct buy, the ability for consumers to directly buy is having a massive impact on how the brand reacts, the type of content they create, and how important influencer content is becoming more so than it's ever been as well.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, isn't it? It's the way that as commerce becomes a more holistic journey, and you're thinking about all the different touch points, that funnel is also collapsed. So performance campaigns and performance marketing suddenly is also branding as well. So you need to be all in one place, and who better, I guess, to do it than the creators on these platforms that are able to kind of make that. And I think we're going to see that increasingly over the next year as content and commerce become ever closer together in the way that marketers need to use them. So Daniel, there's a lot of excitement around this kind of shift into commerce and action. I mean, what degree are organizations banking on it being a big bet? How are they kind of setting themselves up to make the most of it?
I think there's still a huge discrepancy between advertisers in terms of their digital commerce maturity. And we've seen here also in the panel, I think, very compelling examples from brands or categories that are very influencer-led, that are young, that are social media centric. However, and we saw many, of course, D2C brands going to launch in that space. And for those brands, it's often not a nice to have, but a must have, because the notion of the shop has entirely changed. We saw it in some other panelists' elaborations when we spoke about consuming content and purchasing. I think what's happening on these social platforms, which is great for those types of brands, is that consumers don't really differentiate anymore between a media consumption environment and the shopping environment. Those two experiences become conflated into one single stream. That's of course incredibly useful if you're selling beauty products, when you're selling drinks, when you're selling fashion, etc. But other advertising sectors with other demographics, maybe higher prices per goods, etc., they are not there yet. And I think we haven't seen really compelling models on how that could work. Also, how commerce could be integrated. For instance, think of something like the automotive journey. I think it's it's very far-fetched to say we're going to buy the next VW Golf with a click on a button in a social media app. But if models around car ownership, for instance, change, right? It's going to more into the area of, for instance, software services or kind of rental, etc. What are opportunities there? And I think beyond these usual suspect brands that are very influencer-centric, there's a hugely unexplored area of advertisers who are further removed from this world of digital commerce, in particular social commerce, who would need kind of help going there, but also rethink the type of products and engagement models that they have with consumers. Overall, I think in Europe, we're several mentioned it, I showed it in my data as well. China is kind of the bellwether, or APEC in general. There's a lot we can learn from there, but we also shouldn't misunderstand that some of the culturally ingrained way of doing shopping in Asian countries, they are not the same as in Europe and in the US. So I would caution brands to apply a copy and paste approach and really understand what are consumers ready for now, and where can you nudge them towards, bearing in mind the specific cultural environment and way of doing shopping.
Absolutely, I think you touched on it there with the automotive example. It feels like there's an opportunity. It's just the onus is on brands and businesses to figure out what the opportunity is for them and take advantage of it. There's a lot of disruption that we've spoken about today, and it's about who can be brave and make those first moves and ultimately test and learn in this environment and see how they can reach customers in a different way. Michelle, I'll come to you now. I hear through the corridors of the TikTok offices that there are some exciting developments coming on TikTok's Commerce Week lately. It'd be great if you could tell all these guys about some of the exciting things that are happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. So one of the products that I'm the most excited about in terms of what it means for e-commerce and retail advertisers is a product called video shopping ads. So essentially, we're taking the best of our existing solutions for e-commerce advertisers, which right now are dynamic showcase ads and collection ads for anybody who's ever tested with us before. We're taking the best of these lower funnel solutions and combining them with new front-end and back-end automation functionality that basically ensure no one user sees the same experience. So we're applying personalization and product level recommendations on the front end and driving users to the best part of the funnel that suits their level of intent at that moment. So we're in closed beta right now, but already seeing some really exciting results. From our alpha test, we have seen that on average, advertisers see an increase of 40% in ROAS and a decrease of 20% in CPA. And the product is in a very nascent state at that point, so it's only upwards from here. I guess the one other thing I would say about that is our move to lower funnel advertising for e-commerce advertisers on TikTok and our investment in this space also highlights the need for readiness efforts advertiser side. So my biggest piece of advice that I can give for all advertisers, third-party commerce platform advertisers who are buying media on TikTok direct, is to get ready. So what does that mean? That means integrate your catalog with us, ideally through a product feed, so we're getting real-time updates. It means pass us the most advanced signals possible, so you give the algorithm the best chance of delivering strong performance. So that means pixel, events API, advanced matching. I won't get into the technicality of it, but my biggest guidance for anybody on this call, tell your friends, get ready, because video shopping ads and other associated solutions are coming. And that's the best way to ensure the best chance of success for your business.
Nice. So once again, preparation is everything. And I think one thing you touched on there is obviously the kind of the ROAS that we're seeing increasingly. And I know, Daniel, when we recorded the short film we made about e-commerce, you talked on about it was the bringing together of the CMO and the chief financial officer with an ever-growing need of marketers to be able to speak that financial language. I wondered if you could just kind of touch on that, because with the rise of commerce, not only is it an opportunity for us to reach consumers, but it's also an opportunity for marketeers to further justify their advertising spend.
I was just very intrigued listening to Michelle, because it completely resonates with the point I made in that video. We had in the era one of digital commerce a complete separation between the advertising strategy and actually inventory management, production, etc. What we are moving towards now, with the example that you provided, with what Shopify is doing and others, is providing an end-to-end infrastructure where media, i.e. the CMO's domain, isn't disconnected from, say, the real business of a manufacturer, a provider, etc. So we should stop speaking about advertisers. We need to speak about businesses holistically. I think what is happening is that through the measurement available, through the combination of ad creative, what you see with kind of inventory and fulfillment management, suddenly there is a line emerging, a common language between the CMO and the CFO that has been largely absent. As the CMO, typically, like in legacy advertiser organizations, was measured on media metrics, vanity metrics, that he had a hard time explaining to the business. But now, when you can see how many sales of a certain product drive, or what inventory do we have available, what should we need to sell, or what's worth producing in terms of goods, new types of sneakers, colors, etc., based on what we can see on social channels, which ads resonate, we suddenly have an interactive relationship between those two worlds and a common language and metrics, which was absent before. And we can already see that the role of the CMO in digital forward organizations is being scrapped, renamed, rejigged, rescoped. As a chief digital officer, or even a chief product officer, having both financial P&L responsibility as well as media responsibility. And I believe that the next generation of e-commerce will even drive this acceleration further.
So it really is a kind of a blend of the art of legacy creative and marketing, and the science of that kind of financial and real numbers being brought together, which is really exciting. And it's really going to change the game, and how we look at marketing, and with all the automation and the ease of products like Shopify, it's all being brought together to allow hopefully people to optimize on things like creative. And I still think in the industry there's a massive massive space for great creative work that can really help drive that bottom line performance. So it's interesting that these worlds are coming together and creating ultimately more time for us to focus on the exciting part for me anyway, which is the creative. So now looking forward, starting to think about the potential of commerce in the future. We've talked about the purchase journey collapsing and changing how consumers are interacting with it. But what does this shift look like for businesses and I guess society in general? So I guess Nilam, for you, what do you see as the benefit for your clients in the shortening of that journey, and what new opportunities is it opening up for marketing and also through content?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is where influencer content really shines. I think something we believe at INCA is that influencer content is the best when it comes to, I guess, impacting consumer behaviors. And something to think about is that most audiences have had some form of social media for the last 15 years. So this type of content, which is very unique actually, and influencer content has been back in mind for most people for the best part of over a decade now. I think when it comes to shortening the purchase journey, I think previously influencer content was just seen as something on the side, and what's happening now with the introduction and the growth of social commerce is that it's seen as something that's at the heart of it, something that needs to be done correctly in order to drive to that initial purchase, in order to get consumers interested, and actually in order to get consumers to take the leap with the brand and actually give something a try as well. I think something that we're working a lot on is trying to identify how to place that influencer content best within the consumer journey. And actually, once these purchase journeys are collapsing, where should it fit best in? And what platforms are they? And how does that look? And is that only on social media platforms, or is it on other websites as well? And I think, as mentioned earlier, I think this is where we can take inspiration from like the APAC markets to see what they have previously been doing, and I try and identify what works for our consumers given how they consume and how they shop as well.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think, the word that comes to mind there is trust. It's trust of, the trust that consumers have with creators and with influencers, and also how, that trust can be associated with the brands that they represent and they work for, and how they it's a symbiotic relationship. If you trust the creator, then you're more likely to trust that brand and to purchase with them. And it's something we've certainly seen at TikTok. Michelle, talking about, other regions, what have we learned from other markets, and how's that shaping your view and our view of where commerce is headed?
Yeah, and I guess kind of to play a little bit of devil's advocate here, I think what we can learn from the past 1 or 2 years looking at the advancement of social commerce is that there's no one size fits all. I think it's really hard to compare a region like Europe and China, right? In Europe, we have, dozens and dozens of markets who are all quite heterogeneous. So is it fair necessarily to expect a region like Southern Europe to adopt buying behavior similar to that of China now or ever? Maybe not. So I think what we can learn is that, the advancement of things like, purchasing in app and social commerce and collapsing the purchase flow, it's an exciting directional move for the industry. But I think what it represents, at least for Europe right now, is another channel in the overall media mix, not necessarily an endpoint in and of itself. Yeah, again, I think it's really exciting to see the innovation come out of markets in APAC and especially China, but it's not necessarily something that we expect to completely shift behavior in Europe now or really anytime soon.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. It's taking learnings where we can, and not just, as Daniel mentioned earlier, that kind of copy and paste and that replication. Daniel, we talked about the trend of growth continuing, and the trends that we're seeing in other markets. Do you think that they will continue to grow over here? How do you see us purchasing products over the next decade?
Well, I think one thing that we're seeing is growth in GMV being slower than growth in ad spend. So we're going to see, I think, probably 2x, 2.5, 3x growth in ad spend over growth in GMV to drive more traffic to retailer sites, to use retailer data smarter, etc. We are already seeing, I think, a huge fragmentation of the retail experience of consumers, which is hard to do. So we need consumers will need aggregation and guidance. So I call this, in a sense, curated commerce, as the role of the store for many, if you're not a very large one with a top of mind URL or app, is declining. Consumers will find products more serendipitously. The store comes to the consumer rather than the consumer going to the store. But of course, has huge implications for things like, how we buy, in terms of what does an algorithm recommend, how biased is the algorithm, can I customize that algorithm? All of those different things, I think, will become very important for how consumers buy, and also will become consumer considerations. How does a shop come to me? What I think what we can also see is that the world, of course, of brick and mortar and digital commerce are, of course, not separate. We've already seen that with kind of showrooming of cars, etc., where the dealership is being replaced with, let's say, maybe a smaller central location, etc. We see with some even consumer electronics retailers who build experience areas where you can test and try computer games, which you might then buy online, or then go back to your own room, play on Roblox, etc. So a much more hybrid retail landscape will evolve, which is good for also the product diversity which can be bought online, or which will be, which consumers will consider buying online, because products that are very tactile, where you need to touch a certain cloth, fabric, shapes, other things, it's important to have still that haptical experience. And I don't think the metaverse or any other buzzword is going to ever replace that. So the tighter integration between these two worlds of commerce and the role which each stage plays in terms of discovery, immersion, to kind of information, and then actually pushing the button is going to become much more important.
Yeah, I think comes back to a bit what Nilam was saying. He needs a lot more of a holistic view, not just of the marketing that's being kind of executed, but also businesses need to start thinking about all of those touch points in marketing, organic, bricks and mortar stores, and how they all kind of fit together to create that that kind of customer experience rather than a customer journey. Because as we've said, the customer journey is now very, very short. Aoife, coming to you on this, how do you see the growth of Shopify continuing, and what do we have to look forward to seeing from Shopify over the next, and your clients over the next coming months and years?
Well, as a business, we've seen some phenomenal growth over the past few years, and we are preparing ourselves and readying ourselves for these new headwinds. But overall, we are still forecasting a very positive trend continuing. We know that the changes coming, the ones that Daniel mentioned, are serious structural shifts in the economy, in privacy, in the fundamentals of the internet. But the outlook is very positive. And despite all of these new headwinds, what we're seeing for our business is in the US, I know we're talking region, but I'll share a US stat for a moment. In the US, the online GMV from our merchants going through our platform grew twice as fast as US commerce overall. So the trend that we're seeing is incredibly positive. But that said, our merchants, brands, retailers, they still need to be on the right side of all this change. And we know that the way to win in commerce is to connect to your consumers. So if we think about the 2000s, there was online marketplaces and there was kind of one-stop stores like eBay and Amazon, and that defined the 2000s. And then in the 2010s, you've got the emergence of these great D2C brands. And now moving into the future, connecting directly with consumers is going to become even more important. And it's incredibly important that no one is complacent here. Whether you are a large brand or a very small entrepreneurial merchant, you can't afford to sit on the sidelines. Complacency and slowness is going to kill business. So it's really important that all businesses reflect and think about what they can do now. And maybe to double tap for a minute, because everyone's spoken on omnichannel a little bit, so I'll double tap on the offline retail element. We've seen offline retail absolutely soar in popularity. Obviously, last year was a tough year, end of year for retailers to really break back into their streets and start to capture consumer spend again in real life. What we saw through GMV on our hardware POS products is our offline GMV grew 47% year over year in Q2 this year. So we're seeing incredible success with offline GMV as well. And the most successful retailers are really going to need to be effective at breaking down the silos between the digital and the physical storefronts. As the others have said, we need to have really holistic shopping experiences here based on our consumers' needs and preferences. And that doesn't mean in store that point of sale hardware and software will play a role alone. It's going to act as fulfillment centers, showrooms. But I think what's also going to shift here is we're going to see the role of employees in retail stores shift too. The store employees will begin to act more as, let's say, hosts of experience, where brands the CMOs, the CTOs, hopefully backed by the CFOs, Daniel, as you mentioned, they will be given tools to better serve customers in a different way and start to facilitate different experiences like appointment shopping and virtual shopping, live chat. And we'll start to see this integration, this omni-channel come to life in a way that we haven't yet.
So there you go. Everything's getting more fragmented, lots of change going on, but then at the same time, it's all the same as all marketing always has been. It's all about connecting with your consumer and connecting with them the right way, which I feel is a nice summary for it. As everything's changing, but at the core, it's still about speaking to consumers with the messages at the right place at the right time. But there is just increasing amounts of right places and right times. I'm going to take a question from the audience now, if that's okay. So the question is, what is the main reason social commerce has not made it here in Europe? Daniel, I'm going to look to you for that one, if that's all right.
Several. Number one, we were later with social commerce products than in the APAC world, and I think we don't have that socialization through WeChat and other platforms, which has really kind of ingrained that type of model to consumers. In particular, in some European markets, think of Germany, etc., more risk-averse markets focusing on data protection, less used overall to pay via app, etc. So I think this hinders things. Also, I think when we look at China, we see in particular around Singles Day and others, quasi-ceremonial activities about shopping that even a Black Friday that we have here cannot compete with. And this is hugely driven by very few influencers who, in a sense, act as kind of priests of commerce. And I think all of these factors together, we do not have in Europe. And it's not a technical question of deploying these features to make US and European consumers do this. It's really about how very early on they have been cultivated about using the internet.
Yeah, okay, that makes complete sense. Yeah, it comes back down to that word we've mentioned a few times, is trust, and trust in what the platforms they're buying from and their expectations of how things work online. Nilam, I think this one might be a good one for you. How do you see the role of specialized retailers in the e-commerce space next to direct-to-consumer brands and also influencers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just to clarify the question, is it how will influencers have an impact in interacting with retailers?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, all right, perfect. Yeah, I think we've spoken a lot about, the differences between APAC markets and EMEA markets. And I think something that's going to happen a lot more once we develop is looking into where consumers are within our market. So are they within where they are, where they're shopping? And normally it's within retailers, it's within, Amazon, it's within the ASOS's, the Boots of the world. And I think what we're going to increasingly see is a lot of these retailers trying to shorten that journey and trying to utilize influencer content in order to do so.
Yeah, I think, completely agree. I think that is the opportunity. It's about how those brands can tap into kind of the creators and influencers to kind of tell their stories and leverage what they're so great at, which is producing amazing and engaging content, and how that can supercharge and benefit their brands. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to stop there on the questions. I just wanted to take a couple minutes to thank all of our panelists for joining me today. It's been a super interesting and enriching conversation. I know I've learned lots of it. For me, the big themes are, we talked a lot around that purchase funnel collapsing, which is something I think we all know about, but it's for me, it's the impacts of that we're really starting to see now and to discuss on here. Michelle talked about the importance of preparation to take advantage of new ad products that are in market. As did Nilam when it comes to preparation for campaigns. So it really speaks to me that we need to get ready for what's coming next, and be prepared as businesses to take advantage of it. You've also got Aoife, whose business is there to help you get ready and help you take advantage of that. So it feels like a perfect storm, lots of change, but there's lots of people to guide you on that way. And as ever, you have Daniel to kind of give us guidance and tell us when the bellwether is going to toll. So once again, thank you very much for all of your conversations this afternoon, and I'll pass back to you, Lauren.
Amazing. Thank you, Brian. And thank you so much, Daniel, Aoife, Michelle and Nilam for such a, as he said, a fascinating conversation and lots for everyone to think about there. As we mentioned at the beginning, we have recorded the session, so we'll make sure that we send a link to that so you can go back to any points that you like in your own time, so with you all. But yes, with that, I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day. Thank you for joining, and we'll hope to see you soon. Bye.
Thank you.